this kind of segues into the Six Man of the Year award, which is kind of similar, but not really. Um, the player who comes off the bench and delivers the most impact is kind of what the award is slash could be. But I feel like sometimes they get too cute with the award and kind of goes back into the most improved type deal, where it's like, oh, this player has more opportunity coming off the bench, so I'm gonna get the award to him. And sometimes he's not really the best six man. Like you said, statistically, this guy's averaging more points than last year off the bench, so he should be the guy. But are you weighing in the fact that he's finishing games? Are you weighing in the fact that he's looked at to get in the last the go-to bucket to end the game? Are you looking at the fact that the plus minus whole joint, which I'm not a big fan of, but the plus minus when he's on the court is a lot higher. The energy he brings off the bench, he might not even score sometimes, but for example, Ish Smith, he might not score a whole bunch, but his energy off the bench is just like that. Nate Robinson was one of them guys too, where it's just like his energy comes in. It's like, yo, he's a spark plug that we needed. Like the starting five didn't have it. Hey, Nate, go in and get him. Boom. He give you 8 points, but he's only scored 2 of those 8 points. His energy put those other 6 points in. And so I feel like 6 Man of the Year should also be considered to like the non-tangible, the non-statistical things. The black and white eye test should be in there for 6 Man of the Year. So when it comes to that, you have to be a little bit more savvy and not just, like you said, for the most improved, not just to the guy who's doing the most off the bench. It's also weighed out to the guy whose impact means more off the bench. So that's in my eyes what the 6 Man, 6 Man of the Year should go to.
And that's an excellent philosophy. I think another stat that should be in consideration for when deciding this: what person coming off the bench, like you said, playing crunch time and junk like that, huge. Who's playing in crunch time, but also clutch points, which would be in the last 5 minutes. I think it's the NBA criteria. Is either the last 5 minutes or like last 2 minutes, whatever.
Yeah,
Who is scoring crunch? Yeah, who is scoring crunch time buckets? Like Lou Will was in the game. Like crunch time, Lou in the game out the gate. It was not even a question who's gonna be on the floor. It was like Lou, PG, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, Zubac. Like that's who closed the game. Reggie Jackson could have been hooping. Lou.
That's cute. That's cute.
Lou. Hey, good job, Reggie. Lou, go get Reggie. So I tell you, like, the Warriors back when they had the starting all-star starting five, like, you knew who was gonna be in the game. Steph, Clay, Iggy, Dre, and Bogey. And then when KD was there, it was Steph, Clay, Iggy, KD, Dre. You knew they was gonna close the game. Doggone, what's his name? Leandro Barbosa could have been hooping. All right, good job, buddy. Iggy, go kill.
Yep. Yep.
Like that's just what it was, man. Like you know who your better guys are and who your more dependable guys are at certain points in time. And so if your 6 man is dependable in crunch time, he deserved to be in the running for 6 Man of the Year. But he go get to the guy who come out the bench score the most points. They ain't really thinking about impact. And I think that's the number one word for like what guys outside of the game don't think about is impact. Because impact don't show up in the stat sheet. And I feel like we said that a lot in this episode. So impact is something I feel like only real players and like hoop heads can understand. Because you have to be in it to know. Like this guy ain't really have a whole lot of points, but his impact was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so impact definitely is something that need to go into the equation. Like, dang, what did this dude really do for them? Did he provide energy for them? Did he come in and give them a spark? Did he come in and change the energy of the game, the flow of the game? Mm-hmm. And sometimes guys that don't really hoop can't point to that and say that, like, oh man, Nate Robinson came and changed the game. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, he might only have 10, 12 points. Mm-hmm. Shoot, if it weren't for Nate Robinson changed the whole floor of the game.
Yep. Like, that's the funny part too, because it's like his impact is statistically as far as points. You might only point to 2 stretches where he just came out and really did his thing. But the energy that he brought, that like I said, going back defensive play of the year, him making the right rotation, him getting a deflection, him getting the little loose balls and stuff. That's impact that you can't statistically count sometimes, and it's like you can't put that into some equation and get a number out of the impact. So it's not all stats. Sometimes I meant to ask you this too, but sometimes you can't equate this. And so when it comes to most improved and six man, how much does defense weigh in from what the NBA has and what it actually should be?
How much does it weigh in? What do you mean?
Into the award, like so most improved, right? So let's say Kawhi and
Oh,
PG.
like how much of a factor it puts in the other awards?
Yeah, so like you look at the 6 man of the year or most improved, and of course you're gonna look at points, but like how much does defense should it weigh in on what the award is? Because statistically, points numbers wise, I might only improve 6 8 points, which is a lot in the NBA, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not incredible. But defensively, this guy took a jump. So how much do you feel like that should take um a blow into the voting in the process? How much do you think it actually does weigh into it?
I think it should have a big impact because got to shout out Bama boy Herb Jones is a prime example. Herb Jones plays for New Orleans Pelicans. If you don't know, Herb has a huge defensive impact. Has had it since he was at Alabama. He has a huge defensive impact for the Pelicans, but he comes off the bench. He a rookie, comes off
Mm-hmm.
the bench, but his impact is big. And you know he's starting to get a little more recognition about that now. But his impact is big. But he played for the Pelicans also, so you know the Pelicans ain't really a great team.
Yeah.
So uh, he's never going to be in consideration for six man of the year because he's a defensive player. Scoring is the number one commodity in basketball because it's the number one objective. It's the most important aspect of basketball. If you can't score the ball, you're not going to win games. That's
Mm-hmm.
just the fact of it. But if you can't stop people from scoring, you're not going to win a lot of games. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can win just outscoring people sometimes, but when it get down to the nitty gritty, and you need to score, I mean, you need to win games, playoff time, important games. If you can't get stops, you're not going to be successful. So that's why offense is so highly touted when it comes to these things. Defense isn't so much considered. So if a guy can do both, if a guy can score and defend, that's great. That adds to his resume. But if a guy can only defend, he's never going to get the same recognition as a guy who can score. Even if that scorer cannot play defense.
Yeah.
A defender have great defensive stats and average like 6 8 points a game. He's never going to be more highly sought after in six man of the year talks than a guy averaging say 16 off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
He's never going to get the same looks. Even if the guy averages 16 don't play no defense. But
Yeah.
that's just the way the league is set up and basketball in general is set up because like scoring is the number one commodity. So that's just what it is. And I'm a defensive player, so that kind of hinders me a little bit. That hurts my soul a little bit because like sometimes I feel like I ain't appreciated enough like for what I do on defense because I'm not scoring the ball, and that's just my own personal feelings. But uh, I'm big on winning, so I'm not I don't complain about that or nothing. Like if we want to go to score, if we think the score is the best option right now, cool. But at the same time, I'd be like, dang man, like I play great defense though. Like I ain't in the game, So, but that kind of hurt me a little bit. But that's basketball at the end of the day, and that's how guys look at it. So it's not going to be a huge impact. It has a very small impact on who wins other awards other than defensive player of the year. The MVP, if the MVP can play great defense, cool, good, helps his resume. But if a guy in the MVP race can play great defense, he's not going to get it over the best score.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for six man of the year. Same thing for most improved. Like it's just what it is. So I wish it was different a little bit because I'm a defensive guy, but at the end of the day, I understand we got to score the ball. So it is
Mm.
what it is.
So yeah, man. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with the final one and the most talked about, the most sought after award, most valuable player. So in the Nelsons, we got to put his old book back out in Nelson's basketball dictionary, man. What do you feel like your definition is? We're gonna put your dictionary out, but what's the NBA's definition of MVP, and what's Nelson's basketball dictionary definition of MVP?
Well, it's funny because this is kind of relevant right now with things going on with Devin Booker and Joel Embiid. Because Devin Booker recently came out was like they changing the criteria every year based on who's in the running
Mm-hmm.
for MVP. He came out and said that recently. But for a long time in the league, the MVP 9 times out of 10 was the best player on the best team.
Mm-hmm.
That usually was the NBA's MVP. Even if players didn't feel that way, and like people on the outside looking in didn't feel that way, a lot of times the MVP was the best player on the best team, and which is not a bad thing because obviously if you're the best player on the best team, you have a huge impact. You're valuable, but sometimes there's value in guys who are playing on teams that can get to the number 1 seed, number 2 seed, number 3 seed. But if a guy did everything he can and willed the team to the playoffs, that deserves something in my eyes. And so my Nelson Haskins dictionary definition of MVP is the person whose sole impact, just him. I want to look at just him because it's most valuable player, not most valuable team. The person whose sole impact does the most does the most for his team. The criteria should be out of all the people in the running, if we take this person off this team, how good would this team still be? Like, let's ask ourselves that about the most valuable player. If we take Devin Booker off the Suns, how good are the Suns still? Probably still decent with Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton. Probably still a decent team. Probably not the number 1 seed, or most likely not the number 1 seed, but they're gonna be a decent team. They'll probably make the playoffs. If we take Joel Embiid off the Sixers, how good would they be? Probably not that good. James Harden there, like he could step up, but we haven't really seen that side of James in a long time to be the number 1 guy. We haven't really seen that in a while, so who knows how good they really be. But Joel Embiid's impact is huge, so without him, who knows how good they'll be? Probably not that good. Maybe on fringe playoff team. If we take Giannis Antetokounmpo off the Bucks, how good would they be? Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, they'll be good. They'll still be, fighting for a playoff spot. But definitely wouldn't be the same team. Definitely wouldn't be number 1 in the East. Then you got some guys like, what happens if we take DeMar DeRozan off the Bulls? They probably not that good. Probably not making the playoffs. Not saying DeMar DeRozan should be MVP, but I just think we don't consider these things like, yeah, this is the best player on the best team. But I want to give a good example of a recent MVP. So Yoke won last year because without Yoke, Nuggets probably wouldn't be good. Would not be a good team. He giving you points, rebounds, and assists, leading his team in all 3 statistical categories. Like, that's huge impact. They would not be the same team without that. But there are also years with guys like, I know you're going to hate me for this, but guys like Steve Nash out here averaging less than 20 points, but a double-double with points and assists. They feel like he the number 1, he the best player on the best team. He win MVP over Kobe. But we take Kobe off the Lakers not good. They're not good. So I just think that's another point about broadcasters and journalists making these decisions. They giving it to him like, oh, well, they're number 1 seed. He's the number 1 player, number 1 option on the number 1 seed or number 1 team. Must be most valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Players look at it like, doggone it, boy, if Kobe wasn't hooping,
Mm-hmm.
if LeBron wasn't hooping, if KD wasn't hooping, if Kyrie wasn't hooping, like, how many games has it been that Kevin Durant scored 40 and they won by 4? That's value. How many games did Giannis Antetokounmpo get a 40-point double-double? They win by 6 or 8. That's value. Like, we needed every one of these buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you did not score 40, we'd have lost the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm going to wrap this up with a story. You got to throw my story in there. I played with my high school teammate named Shakari. I can throw his name in there because we also cousins on my dad's side. So me and Shakari was once arguing about who's going to win MVP. So at one point, In our junior season, Shakari had a game where he scored 41 points, almost a school record, 1 point behind the school record for points in the game. Had a great season. He had a 40 ball, like I just said. He had a couple games he scored 30, a couple games he scored 20. He had a great season. Great season. It was coming up that we was going to have our banquet, which is where, we find out who wins MVP and Defensive Player of the Year and Most Improved and all that within our team. We having a discussion about who should win MVP. I said, that's Carl. You probably going to win it. But let's not act like I ain't deserve something. Like, I need some credit. Like, I need to be in the running. Let me say that. I should be in the running MVP. He like, Nels, I scored 41 points. Almost the most in school history. And you think you're going to get MVP over me? And then I had to hit him with the facts at this point. So what people don't realize about that game, not trying to steal no credit from this man. I love Shakar. He had a great year. That was a great game. Some of the best basketball I ever seen in a high school guy when he scored that 40-point game. So, and that's the most points anybody ever scored while I was on their team. I think. Pretty sure. Yeah. So, I love Shakar. But I had to hit him with the facts when he said this to me. What people don't realize about this game, the same game he had 41 points. We won the game by 12. I had 12 blocks, which is great. Obviously, like huge game. But that's like the low light in the newspaper because it says Williams scores 41 points on the headline. That's all people remember, which I'm not mad about that. Like he deserved all that credit. So I had to break it down to him. I said, Shakar, what you don't realize about that game. We won. No, we didn't win by 12. We won by 8. I'm sorry. We won by 8. You had 41 points. We won by 8. I had 12 blocks. That means if I get 5 blocks instead of 12, that's 7 less. If I get 5 blocks instead of 12, 5 blocks still a great game. Nobody would be like, man, why you ain't block more shots? If I had 5 instead of 12, we lose that game by 6. So instead of it saying Williams 41 points and win, it says Williams scores 41 points as Tigers lose. And now it doesn't mean as much. So while you were scoring those points, I was on the other end making sure those points didn't go to waste. And so you might win MVP. You probably will. You had big games. I would never take that away from you. You had great games this year. But let's not forget who was behind you. Because not to be the guy to steal, I ain't trying to steal your joy or nothing like that. But let's be real. You have not won a single game without me. Like, you ain't won no games that I won behind you. And, like, we need each other. Like, that's what it is. We need each other. And so all I'm saying is the points you scored meant nothing if it went for Nelson Haskins. Like, if it went for 12 blocks, 41 points would have been down the drain. Let's just be real. So like I said, I deserve a little bit of credit when it comes to this MVP discussion. And so, needless to say, my junior year, he ended up winning. He won MVP. I was not mad at all. Like, I knew he was going to win it. Yeah. I love him. So, I'm glad he won. My senior year, though, I scored just enough points. I scored a few more points in a game. I was in the mix. And then I messed around and won. I won MVP my senior year. So, I'm glad that it's shaped up that way because both of us have one now. So, now it's like, man, for certain. I wouldn't have won no games without you, and you wouldn't have won no games without me. And so it shook out the right way. So sometimes value can get lost in the shuffle between who's the best player on the best team, is what I'm saying. So people consider him to be the best player because he scores the most points. People weren't looking at me as the best player because I play defense. Now, did I win Defensive Player of the Year? Yeah, hands down, easy. Give it to him. Who else was going to get it? But I knew I was going to win that. But like, they go back to the question you asked me, how much of a role did defense play in me getting MVP? Not a lot. Clearly, not a lot. Then my senior year, I scored a few more points per game. Had still the same defensive presence that I had last year. But instead of averaging 8 points, now I'm averaging a double-double with the rebounds and the blocks. So now the points come into play. It's like, all right, Nelson deserved MVP. So, like, that's all it is, man. Like, you got to score. Score is the number one commodity. The number one player on the number one team, 9 times out of 10, wins the MVP in the league. But If you took me off this team, how good would we be? If we took Shakari off the team, how good would we be? And you decide whose impact is bigger. And I think that should be criteria in the league. If you take so and so off of this team, would they be in the playoffs? Like the war. That's what there's a reason KD and Steph Curry wasn't winning MVP when the Warriors was on top of everything. There's a reason because if you took Steph off the team, they still was gonna make the playoffs. Took KD off the team, they won 73 games. So like, there's a reason they weren't winning MVP. But that should be the criteria every single year. If we take someone off the team, how good would they be? And that's my Nelson asking definition of who should win MVP or what the MVP really means. So, what would you say, my boy?
I think the most trash way that people try to defend MVP is if we swap these players on these teams, what would the outcome be? I think that's the most trash thing to do because when you're building your team, you strategically place players around them to fit this player. So if you swap Joel Embiid and Jokic, what would the outcome be? Two different players, bro. That's
It'd be
that's not
bad.
gonna it's not gonna work. Both teams would be bad because so I was talking to this guy about this literally yesterday. So he was kind of saying how personally, if he had to pick between Joel and Joker, he would pick Joker because he likes his guys who pass a little bit more, get the team involved, which is cool. I'm not mad about that. I don't care, but that's what you prefer. And I was like, I get where you're coming from, but here's the thing. Let's go back to last year's Philly team. Joel does not need to be the facilitator because that's what Ben Simmons is the Joker essentially as far as doing that for Philly. So Joel can focus on getting buckets while Ben Simmons get everybody else involved. And that's James Harden this year. So Joel, you go out there and score 30. James, you go out there and get us 8 assists. Joker, you go get 30 and get us 8 assists. That doesn't mean his value is bigger than Joel's. That doesn't mean Joel's is bigger than his. My role is different. And so that's why I kind of push back on the if you take this player off the team, what happens now? Because if you look at the Warriors, right? If you take Steph Curry off of the Warriors are we already seen what the Warriors look like. That's terrible. So you
Bad.
can't compare that. This is why I want to. The only change I will make to the MVP, I wouldn't say valuable. I would say impact. We've been saying this the whole episode. So impact is the most important thing. So um, kind of go back to this too. The Warriors' most valuable player is not Steph Curry. The Warriors' most valuable player is Draymond Green.
Draymond Green.
Because if you take Draymond off of there, Steph can still do his thing, but the Warriors will not be the Warriors. You cannot
Brian.
flow at all without Draymond being who he is. I know you're not
No,
giving
no,
him the
no.
biggest thing.
I'm gonna tell you, Brian. You talking to Draymond Green, Brian?
Oh yeah, I know.
I was Draymond Green in high school. Like guys was like, I mean, the players knew what I did. You know, obviously they appreciated. I don't want nobody to think I was underappreciated within the
Yeah,
system. On the outside looking in, I was the Draymond Green. It was like, man, Steph Curry hooping. Oh, Draymond, he a good player.
yeah,
He
yeah,
do his job. But that you talking to Draymond, so I was the one like, hey, if it went for me, sure, we ain't playing no doggone defense, and we be here.
yeah.
I'm playing all the defense. So, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I had to legit, that was sitting on my heart when you said that. I was the Draymond of my team,
Yeah.
so I'm
So
luckily it's not that way no more. But go ahead.
but yeah, so it's like that's why I think we need to change from most valuable player to the most impactful player because literally we're looking at impact. And so when you look at the most valuable player, a lot of teams, most valuable player is not going to be the best player. It's just what it's not going to be. LeBron's not the most valuable player on those Heat teams. It's arguably Chris Bosh because the Heat are going to be a great team without Chris Bosh, but they're elite and they're taking that very next step. They can really do what they want to do because of Chris Bosh being there. Defensively, ain't too many bigs that can rotate out there like he does, jump on the hedge, blitz, and get back to his bid. That's hard to do, bro. And on the offensive end, he can catch and shoot and still give you, anywhere from 14 to 20 points a night here and there. And he can step and give you 30 balls too. So it's like LeBron give you his 28. D Wade gonna give you his 26, but that third player sometimes is usually the most valuable player on that team. Sometimes the second player. So Pippen was probably the most valuable player with some of those Bull teams. You can argue. I would not be mad at all saying Jordan the most valuable player. I'm not here to debate that. But just kind of going back to my point of the most valuable player is not always going to be the best player. So um, I kind of want to see the rebranding and re-imaging of the most valuable player to the most impactful player. And so, in my eyes, break it down like this for the MVP: their stats, they play a huge role. Um, the film breakdown of what they're doing. And now I'm gonna throw a little extra on this when we talk about the film breakdown. Um, this just this season, not we ain't talking about the whole resume and career building thing. I don't care nothing about that. This year, what is this player doing so special this year with the eye test that makes him MVP? So going back to James Harden, the year he had the 40, he dropping averaging 40. That year was stupid because you literally had to change defense on that man. So you
Literally.
had KD one night, Kyrie next night, D Wade one night, LeBron, Kobe, all these guys. You playing defense like you do. James Harden, I'm playing middle school defense and my butt going to the sideline. You're not finna go left. Like nobody else in the league got that treatment ever. Like nobody. Like you're not going left, James Harden. And if you are, you finna get a double team. I don't got my hands behind my back like I'm in jail, bro. Like usually that's disrespectful when you see that jump, bro. Like dudes be like, man, you ain't finna score nothing anyway. I'm putting my hands behind my back. It's disrespectful. No, though, bro. That's the
Facts.
ultimate sign of respect for James Harden, bro. Like you gonna have to because I'm gonna get this foul call. This
Don't
dude
touch
literally
me.
changed. Exactly. Dude literally changed how basketball was played on defensive end because of that. Westbrook triple double year. That dude was balling his butt off, bro. Like his impact on the game was outweighing what anybody else did that year. Because we talked about it before. If it wasn't for his triple doubles, the Thunder's not winning them games. They're losing a lot more games without him. So, or without his number of impact, his statistical impact. So they need him triple doubles, and not just him stat impact. Stat padding. It's him literally out there willing them to win. And so, the stats play an impact. That's very big. The eye test of what they're actually doing out there. So it's like, dude, he's literally out there balling his butt off. Like it's a difference between scoring 30 points and having an impactful 30 points. Like when Kobe goes on a tear and he's dropping 40 on your head every night, he's putting fear in everybody's heart, bro. It ain't just him like just scoring 40. He's putting fear in your heart, bro. Like bro. Let me go to bed at 8 o'clock tonight to make sure I'm resting for Kobe, bro.
I need to be wide awake.
I'm finna drink this energy drink. I'm waking up in the morning with coffee right before the game, taking another nap. I'm finna get this Red Bull, whatever you gotta do, bro. I gotta meditate. I gotta pray. I gotta get my mind right because Kobe is not finna play around, bro. And then it's just like that year. I mean, Kobe like that area, but that year it's just like. So that's how I don't see how Steve Nash got that award the second year. But we ain't finna get into that because Nash is Nash. It's done. But Kobe that year was a man possessed. And it was just like, oh my goodness, bro. Like, what is this man doing? So it's just like NBA gets too caught up in certain narratives sometimes, but don't take into account of that narrative. Like, yeah, it's cute to give Westbrook the triple double because he's a triple double leader. Cool. But the bigger grand scheme of things is that his triple doubles are impacting winning. If they had triple doubles and they was like the 16th seed and then you basically a lottery pick, oh man, forget that. But the triple doubles willed them to that seventh seed or sixth seed, whatever they were at the year. So not to discredit his triple doubles, but the triple doubles were the reason why they were winning. So people try to be, oh, that's the only reason he got it. No, bro, he was impacting winning. So I feel like that's what we should ultimately come down to of like, is what he's doing impacting winning? And so um that's just kind of what I kind of basically goes down to for MVP. Like his stats can't be averaging like 20 points, bro. Like I love Steve Nash, but he was averaging like 18 and 6. So it's like, it's cool. But no. So um but his impact to that team was very vital, which is why he won it. So not to discredit him, there was like the number one seed one of them years, and there was like the top three seed the year after that. So cool, whatever. But when it comes down to the most valuable player or the most impactful player, are your stats there? Is the film there? And it's the narrative. You need all three. I don't feel like you can win MVP without having all three. So that's where Booker comes into play. That's where Tatum is sneaking up there a little bit. Joker and B. Um, and the reason why I feel like sometimes you can't say, um, take this player off. What does that team still do? Is because you look at, like you said, the Warriors when they had KD and Steph. Of course, you take them off, you're not gonna be the same thing. But I built the team this way, so you can't just say take them off and see what happens. With the Suns this year, you took CP3 off, Book still balling, so that pads his resume being like, man, Book should
I
win
do
this
say
year.
that.
So that's why I'm kind of just like, you can't really always say take this player off and see what happens, because it's kind of like,
But to
yeah,
combat that, John Morant was in the MVP conversation for a while, and then he got hurt, and his
mhm.
team been still hooping. Like they was like 10-2 without him, and like now that didn't like nix this whole MVP thing because it's like, oh, they don't even need y'all. They just hooping.
But it's
Not
not
saying,
fair though.
but yeah, I feel like that special scenario with Ja is like very fair because it's like he was hooping, but like clearly they would be good without him.
But let's would you take them serious without Ja?
No, but they winning. So should we start? Then now you ask the question: should we take them serious? You know what I'm saying? Because obviously they don't have no star names other than Ja. But now with them hooping without him, you look at like, man, should we take the Grizzlies serious? Now, of course, we ain't gonna really take them seriously to the playoff time and see what they do. But we look at them now like maybe the Grizzlies might be legit. Like it's always teams that's top three in their conference that are
Mhm.
never real threats in the playoffs. Nobody's really afraid of them. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? Like Atlanta for a couple years, like the Hawks for a couple years in the East, or like shoot, I would say the Nuggets and the Jazz for a couple years over in the West. Like they top three, top four every year. But are anybody really afraid of them? Probably not. And that's how we was looking at the Grizzlies. So when John got hurt and they still hooping, now we look at like maybe we should be like thinking about the Grizzlies, but we won't really know until playoff time and see what they do. But I definitely think that hurt his MVP chances. Not only being hurt and missing time, but them still hooping without him. Because you remember that stat used to be out there, like when the Warriors and KD was still together, it was like games won with Steph didn't play, and it was like under 500. Games won when KD didn't play, over 500. Games won when Draymond didn't play, under 500. I mean, games played. I said games won. Games played when Draymond didn't play,
Yeah.
500. So that is impact. That is value. So that let the world know the Warriors didn't need KD. What we already knew that, but this is even more proved that. It proved that fact, and it also proved that Steph was more valuable than KD. And Draymond was more valuable than KD. Not saying KD isn't valuable, because clearly he is one of the best players in the league. But when we're talking about talent and value, there's two different things, and that
Mhm.
proved to us that Steph was had more. He held more value to the Warriors. Not necessarily the better player, but he held more value to the Warriors than vice versa. So that's all it really came down to me. But the book, on the other hand, opposite of John, playing without CP3. CP3 the one hurt, and he got to hoop without him, and they still win. So that helps his MVP case, even though the league isn't really giving him recognition like they should. Still was a good thing. Same thing for Embiid. Embiid hooping. Ben Simmons sat out all the year until they traded him, and then now you got James Harden. He hooping even better. So now it's like, shoot, he was hooping without a second star. Tobias Harris ain't necessarily a star. I mean, the team's still good, but he was hooping without a second star in the league, and he was still MVP race. That helps his case. So, and then Yoke, same thing. Jamal Murray have been playing. They still hooping. Helps his MVP case. So that's why I say, if we take this person off, how good would they really be? If you take Yoke off the Nuggets right now, it's over with. No Jamal Murray, no Yoke, it's over with. Joel Embiid, take him off the Sixers right now. Or at least back when Ben was still there, he wasn't playing. Take Joel Embiid off Sixers, oh, lottery pick, lottery team.
Mhm.
Now they got James Harden, they might be a little bit better. But all of that is factoring in who would be good without their best player. And so that's just, but like you said, that's just my definition. You have your own little definition, and I respect that too. But
Mhm.
I definitely think you got to think about who would be good without that guy.
I mean,
Obviously, we're playing differently, but still.
that does play a role into it, but I don't feel like you can just automatically be like, "Oh, Jaws eliminated because the grid is still good." So think about it like this: if going back to the Atlanta Hawks, right? Nobody took them serious because they didn't have the guy. Without Ja, who is the guy for the Grizzlies? They got Triple J, who is cool. They got Dylan Brooks, who is cool. I'm not trying to discredit any of those guys, but Ja is the man. Like
And that's true.
he
But
pushes them from being, let's say, the fourth, fifth seed to being potential third, second seed. Late game situations, give the ball to Ja. So it's like you need that guy to separate you. His impact will be, let's say it like this. His impact will take you from winning games from kind of like you're saying with coaching. You might win a game from 1 to 6 points without Ja. With Ja, you win the game from 10 to 15 points. Not saying that's literal, but that's the impact that that guy can give you. So you say take him off, they're still winning, but now you winning comfortably and very confidently versus nail biters. Oh man, we still winning. So record wise, it might not be as big, but impact wise, are we winning games very handily? Because going back to the excitement play, right? So Ja finna come down every night. He giving you a highlight. But little do you realize that highlight is what excites the defense. Oh, Ja came down crazy. Oh snap, Ja did the most craziest dunk we ever seen in game. Now the whole team hype ready to go out there and bust everybody head. That one play from Ja that nobody else in the league can do is his part of his impact that he brings to the Grizzlies.
that's
Nobody
true.
else in the league can excite the team like they do. Steph Curry's three is not a regular 3-point play. Steph Curry, sauce you up, dropping you off from 30 feet away, turn around, he already back on defense for the ball drop through the net. But he tapping up the fans like, man, that was a good 3 ball, won it. I know it was. Like that impact is something that you can't take away. So the Grizzlies might win the game by 6 points without him. Okay, cool. Win by 16 with him. Steven Adams balling out a little bit harder because he's there. His leadership is what's going in there too. So I feel like the impact cannot just be minimized to him being on or off the court. So I feel like sometimes, like for you, yeah, you take you off, the defense is terrible. But if I had a Pat Bev in front of you, you'd be like, oh snap, the defense is still pretty good. We're still winning without Nelson. But we winning games by 16 with Nelson because he was swatting shots at the board versus having a good rotation. Yeah, the backup behind you good. He can rotate, but he ain't shot blocking like Nelson. And he ain't putting a fear of guy in him like Nelson do. Like when Nelson in the game, ain't nobody touching the paint. Backup in the game, they get in the paint and they just missing shots. Or they rotate, so it's not the same thing. It's two different games when this we've seen it happen where Nelson's in the game, Nelson's out the game. I've been a witness to it. And so that's the same thing I'm saying for Ja Morant, to where it's like you can't just minimize him to, oh, he missed a run and they're bad without him. Because you look at a Joel Embiid, his impact is going to be they're terrible without him. Okay, cool. But you can't use that exact same thing to show what Ja's impact is, because now you just creating a coach for having good coaching to be able to coach around him, and without that, you're minimizing their depth to have around him, and you pretty much just saying, oh, he has a good team, so he's not valuable, he's not impactful. He's still impactful to this team, but there's the difference between having him and not having him could be a very good contender to now a legit championship contender. Not saying it actually is, but sometimes that's what the impact and value is. So that's why I'm not a biggest fan of take him off the team and just see what happens. Like, that's not the full truth in my mind. That's my opinion. So, like you said, that's your definition. So I'm not gonna, discredit you because I can't write your book of definitions for you. But that's just in my mind. You have to consider that and not consider the other things too. So that's just how I see it sometimes with the MVP.
I feel that, bro. Like I definitely get that. Like you said, but we both got our own definitions. So I guess that's just what it is, man. Do you got anything else you want to throw at the people before we get out of here?
Um, I feel like we have the MVP podcast of basketball. We should just get nominated for that. So the NBA should give us that award too. But
If
what
y'all
what do
got
I
one.
know? That's I feel like we should change the game. Be like, yo, what's the MVP podcast, the most valuable podcast, and that should be us. But it's just a discussion for another day.
Hey man, just suggest, just suggest.
This whole podcast is suggesting, so I'm about to throw another one in there.
So man, that does it for us, man. For another episode of the BeBall Jones podcast, we appreciate y'all for listening to another one. So y'all be sure to like and subscribe, man. Get in the comments. Let us know what you think about our definitions. What are your definitions? And let us know what you think about like how our definitions vary, especially on the MVP. Like, do you think taking certain guys on certain teams and them being a bit worse should add to their case, or like how you feel about that? How you feel about Ja's stance? Let us know who you think should win every award. We ain't really get into that. We ain't want to get into those kind of debates. That ain't what what you getting into today. So you let us know who you think should win based on your own criteria. But anyway, man, follow Brian on all social medias at BeBall Jones. As you can see on the screen, if you're on YouTube, that's BeBall Jones on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And follow me on at NellyH34 on Twitter, Nelson.Haskin on IG, and Nelson Haskin on Facebook. And be sure to follow the podcast on TikTok at BeBall Jones Podcast on TikTok. Be sure to go on there, check us out, check all our videos out, like it up. You know, we appreciate that. And that's it for another one, man. I hope y'all appreciate it. Hope y'all like this one. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode. And without further ado, man, we out.